So I guess first, you kind of already got into it, but like, just tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, now you're one of the main guys who started this organization, went over to Uganda. Like, how did you end up going to Uganda, caring, wanting to go there in the first place? Like, tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, I went in college. I told a friend that I wanted to go to Africa. I'd always been intrigued by the continent, and so my friend came back to me and said, well, I signed us up for a missions trip. We're going with a group called Teen Mania, and you have to raise $4,000, and we're leaving this summer for a month. I was like, okay. I don't even know where Kenya was, but I was like, okay, I'll go. And so I went there. It was the first time I saw extreme poverty firsthand, and I was pretty shocked and confused as to how many people were living in horrible conditions, and yet, in my opinion, the world wasn't really talking about it. And so we came there and brought them like Jesus dramas, and I felt like in some ways it was really ineffective because they were hungry, they didn't have like enough food or like resources, and yet we weren't providing that. We were providing a Jesus drama. And in the sense, if we really wanted them to listen to the drama, then I feel like their daily needs should have been met first. And so it was a really life-changing experience for me, and I came back to film school, and I realized that when I got out, no matter what, I was going to go back to Africa. And so it was very different than what I had planned. I had been working on making Hollywood musicals. That's the reason I went into film school. I wanted to go into the musical genre and bring back modern-day Hollywood musicals. And so that was very different than my journey to Africa. But like most people that go there, it does really ruin their life in the best way possible. They see what the real world looks like, and they're oftentimes forever changed. They can't be the same after they've heard the stories. So.
Did you hear that? Forever changed.
A lot of what you just said represents a lot of how I kind of felt about it and how I feel about it. A lot of the religious things. We've talked to a bunch of people in the street, and from Springfield, Missouri. It's very conservative, and a lot of people have said that they're more concerned with giving them the gospel when they have so many other needs. And so I appreciate you saying that, you know, you saw that issue as being more important than spreading the gospel. The gospel may be important, but I just think that helping people is a lot more important initially. Like, say, giving someone food rather than, you know, worrying about converting them right away. So
yeah, well, religion in so many ways has become a show, you know, or I should say spirituality in the West has become very much a show. And there's this new song by John Foreman where he says, instead of a show, why not justice? Why not like show love through justice? Because that's really an applicable way to do it. And I think a lot of the Western Church is waking up to it slowly, but has been confused for a long time. We've built these mega churches. We've oftentimes used the donations of the community and the congregation to pour directly back into themselves, where we should be pouring it out and helping and aiding the orphans and the widows. It's like completely clear that that's what true religion is. And so I think that I hope that people do start waking up to that, because I think the West has a lot of great things about it, but we get confused. I think there's a lot of distractions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How'd you get those other two guys to go with you? To like, so you just told them I got to go back to Africa. You want to come with me, or how'd that work?
I knew I was going to go back, and I just knew that no matter what, whoever was going with me, I started asking people, college roommates, just anyone I'd come in contact with, my family, my brother, my sister, will you come with me? Will you come with me? And a lot of them wanted to, but no one was really serious about it. Bobby and I had been friends for, I think, 6 years. And so he had shown interest, and he's a really hard worker and an amazing producer and a great storyteller. And so I was like, you should come. So the two of us started working on the project for a couple months. He lived at my house with my parents' house right after college. And then, like a month before we left, Lehr, who was 19 at the time, wanted to make a feature film. He wanted to help, make a movie, a story. So yeah, so Lehr, we met for coffee, and he's like, I want to make a feature film. I just finished college, so I was 23, He was 19. I said, if you want to go to Africa, there's an extra spot, someone to hold the boom mic. You know, we need someone. And he's like, don't tempt me, man. And I was like, I'm not tempting you. I'm really asking you. We need a third man. And so he said yes. And then 3 weeks later, he said no. And then Bobby and I went to his house and put a sign on his car because he said he needed a sign that said go. And we put like the Switchfoot CD, Dare You to Move, like in his CD player. And he called us. He's like, all right, I'm in. And like he told his parents, and 2 weeks later, he finished his exams and left the next day for Africa, for Sudan. That's where we were originally going. Mm-hmm.
And it's never been the same since, huh?
No, yeah, you come back completely changed by the stories you hear, and then we just felt a weight, you know, that like we had met these kids, and at the time in 2003, like no one was doing anything about it. This war had been going on 17 years, and they said, this is Africa, these things happen, and the rest of the world doesn't value, you know, an African child's life as much as, you know, someone in another country. That's just the way it is, and that's the fact. So we thought, what if we could help change that in some way?
So I kind of know your answer already, but maybe not, maybe I don't. Is it everybody's responsibility to care? Everybody, like not just like certain people, not people with money, but every American's, like, is it their responsibility to care about Africa's problems?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if you can take the word care and homogenize it. You can't. I don't think that like people were created to be in a uniformed or socialistic society, or like everyone has to care at a certain level or a certain capacity. There are people at Invisible Children who are extremely talented at what they do, but they've never even gone. They've been here like 2, 3, 4 years with us, and they haven't gone to Africa. It's not in their DNA necessarily to like hear the stories firsthand. Their gifts are somewhere else. Do they care less or more than others? I don't know. I don't know if there's a way to quantify that, but I think that everyone is created with certain gifts and a certain level or ability to do something. And so yes, I do think that it is everyone's job to find out what that gift is or what that talent is, and to tap into that, and to really be intentional about using that. When that happens, I think the world does change.
But what about like for Africa specifically? Is it that bad in places like Africa and in the third world, like people living in extreme poverty? Is it that bad that everybody should be doing something about it, or are there other issues? You know, people could be focused, like people can, you know, focus on this, focus on that, or is it like, what do you think?
There's many studies and statistics and reports that have been done, and it's clear that if you look at the most devastating places in the world, as far as like deaths, disease, it is Africa. It's definitely, you know, Bono has said that it will be, that our generation will be defined by 3 things: the war on terror, the digital revolution, and what we did or did not do to put the fire out in Africa. So in 100, 200, 50 years from now, people will look at our generation and say, you mean to tell me there was this much devastation going on a daily basis in Africa, and you didn't do anything about it? There's a Holocaust going on, and you didn't do anything about it. Schools, books, every year are continuing to report upon the Holocaust that took place, World War II, which they should. It's an extremely important story that needs to continue to be told. But at the same time, there's very little focus on a modern day, current Holocaust that's happening right now. That, to a great degree, can be stopped. So yes, it is everyone's job and role as just a human being living and breathing on this planet to do something for others who are living a really challenging life. Yeah, I do think that everyone has a role to play when it comes to the challenges that Africa is facing. Mm-hmm.
We've encountered people who said that they care by letting the government take care of it. They say they care, but our government, that's their job to take care of it. It's kind of pushing that away. What would you say to someone who says, well, my government is supposed to be taking care of this. What can I really do as a person? I pay taxes. So,
yeah. I think that the people that rely on the government to take care of it forget how and why America was created. It was created so that the people can have a voice, that they can vote, that they can like bring up issues and say this is what's important to us. And when the citizens of our country push the agenda and say this is what we want, then our forefathers, you know, plan works, and our politicians and our government have to respond. They have to make a difference. If America ever changes or doesn't do that, then we have failed. We have failed our forefathers, and we are no longer the free country that we claim to be. So in a way, it has to be the citizens' priority to say to our government, you need to do something, you need to get involved, because if you don't, it is not in the government's interests. You know, America has allies and they have interests, and Africa is an ally. The continent and different countries that make up the continent are allies to us somewhat, but there's no interest in Africa. Why would they be interested? There's no reason to get involved except for strictly a political reputation interest, like the caregivers or, you know, the donators or the, you know, it's basically to put on a political resume and say, look at how much I've given away monetarily to people who need. That's how I see it. I feel like a lot of American citizens, and oftentimes myself included, become numb to the idea that we can actually change things or make a difference. It's like you think of DC and you think it's just this like huge machine in which you have no control over. I mean, even though I've been there many times and even talked to many senators and congressmen, I still have to fight that paradigm in my head that my vote counts or that I can make a difference. And I hope that our generation wakes up to that and realizes that we do have a strong role to play and we can actually see things change. I think that Ron Paul is a great example of how, you know, just one man has really gotten young people to start thinking about our founding fathers and what they really meant, how they really saw America. You know, how when John Adams like spoke and when he had the vision for what this country could become, I think that Ron Paul wants us to bring us back to that ideal. And we're really caught up in an industrial, we're caught up in war as an option. And I think that there's a lot of people that don't want that to be the first option on the plate. So, yeah.
I agree a lot. I won't comment, but we'll keep
going. So if people need to do something, what do you think actually works? Like what works when we've got them actually to care? Once we got them there, where do we take them? What do we take them to do?
Well, that's like a great question. It's one that we get asked probably the most often over the past years, and our answer is we don't know you specifically, but if we did know you and spent time with you, I hope that we could encourage you to move in the direction that excites you the most. So there's not like a blanket rule of a way to get involved or what to do, but everyone has skill sets, everyone has like passions or ideas, and our whole role at Invisible Children is to guide them towards that and to have them cross the bridge into actually delving into their talents and their skills and their passions. And so for some people it is money. They have money, they know how to raise money, and you know, money does actually build buildings and buy supplies and does educate a lot of students, so that helps. But talent is just as important. If you can build a website, if you can create film, if you can be a music therapist, if that's your talent, then go do that. And then, you know, in America, time is so, has such a number to it. You know, there's like a lot of people who don't have time, but if they're willing to give up some of their time, one day a week, a couple hours a week, to just even petition senators or to make trips to DC or Africa, it does make a huge difference. Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's like specific, say, that time, that money, those gifts, is there a best avenue to bring them to, you know? Because people probably, if they're like, okay, I have those, well, where's the best place to bring those? Like, just like really specific. Like, where would they bring that talent, that time, and that money?
Like, to me, what always interests me, whether you're talking to someone here or in Africa, is talking about people's dreams. Because, like, everyone, even if they don't initially say that they have any, eventually they will come out with the dream for their life. Like, what they imagine themselves doing, or what they dreamt about as a kid, or even now. It's like that ideal goal, that ideal scenario. Like, if I could wake up every day and do this, that's what I'd want to do. And for me, it's like, then go do that. Go do that dream. Because the world's going to benefit from you living out your dream. And use that dream in some capacity to give back or to do more. So whether you're an athlete or a politician or a comedian, you should go do that, because that's what you were wired and programmed to do. And there's a quote I always use. It's that, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go do that. Because what the world needs is for people to come alive.
Wild at Heart.
Yes, and when you look around, John Eldridge said that in Wild at Heart, and it's true. If you go to the mall, if you go to many public scenarios, whatever, you will see a lot of people walking around, and they don't even realize that they're alive. You know, it sounds simple to say, or it sounds like ludicrous. Like, what do you mean they don't realize they're alive? They don't realize that they're living and breathing, and they have an active choice to participate in the 80, 90 years they're given on Earth. You know, we're just programmed to think that we're like a number, and we can't really make a difference. And I think that, especially in the West, we have to fight against that a lot. I think that, like, that idea alone has a lot to do with depression, with suicide, with a lot of the challenges that the West faces. Because a child, a 15-year-old kid, already is like so cynical, so jaded, so hurt, and they just are like, I don't care. Why should I care? Or what's it going to do? So we have to each day help change that paradigm. Mm-hmm.
I agree with that a lot. It's just like, that's what we see a lot of the time, is just kind of apathy. I don't even know if this is leading into a question, but there's just so many apathetic kids out there, and most of them don't even know they're apathetic because they're so wrapped up in what they're doing, but they're wrapped up in just going through the motions of life.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where I'm going with this with the question.
I got kind of a devil's advocate question. So, I don't know, when I think about that, and I'm one of those people. I'm trying to pursue my dream right now. I mean, like, this is my dream happening right now.
Right.
We're making my dream. I'm
you
pursuing
it. Video, so
I have it on video, so there's proof. I'm making my dream. But I wonder about people who are in Africa, are in like South America, or just like places in poverty. And like all these Americans pursuing their dreams, like, I can't pursue my dreams. I have to sit here and I have to work. You know, you get to pursue your dreams because your parents have enough money, so you don't have to work every day of your life to make your food, to go buy. Like, you have the freedom and the time to pursue your dreams. And so I feel like if I was born somewhere else or was someone else, I might not have that chance to pursue my dreams, because all I'd have chances, I would have to, like, you know, make sure the crops were there, make sure I ate each day, and didn't even have that opportunity to even start this, you know, that it was just something in my mind. And like, I don't know, I feel like I would look at Americans and say, you know, they're just lucky they get to pursue their dreams. They're just, I'd be almost angry at that. I don't know.
No, it's a great point. And the truth of the matter is, like, the individuals, the people who are born in America, do have a huge advantage and a huge privilege, because you get first chances, second chances, third chances to pursue dreams. And American dreams happen every single day. Every single day there is someone who dreamt up an idea and it's taken off. And we could go on and on about, like, the success stories of Americans who were born into poverty and are now very successful individuals. So it's true, America, the way the fabric of its existence is birthed upon that idea. And it's exciting, because it's like, if you think about it, even when it comes to like Facebook and YouTube and Google, these are all new inventions done by young people who said, I have an idea. I think the world would be different if we could communicate better online, if we could share stories and videos with each other, or if we could search anything in the world, including streets, including libraries, and it would pop up. The information you needed would pop up. So these are all 20-something-year-olds creating and literally changing the landscape of not only like business, but how humans interact. It's exciting. It's an exciting time to be alive. We're living in really dramatic times. But to answer, like, if you're living in South America or India or Africa and you're looking to the West or Americans saying, that's really unfair. But at the same time, America is made up of the most diverse countries from around the world. We are all immigrants at one point. You know, my ancestors came from Greece and Europe, but there are people entering America every single day from all over the world and pursuing that dream. And it's interesting when you think about it. I don't know if there's been studies done, but the people who actually make it here, oftentimes, or who even made it here 100 years ago as immigrants, they had to have that passion or that drive to get them here, in a sense. So it's almost like the cream of the crop, or the most passionate, the ones at the forefront of wanting to pursue their dream, are the ones who got on the boat and started their business and pursued it, believing and hoping that their children and their children's children would have the ability to pursue art and literature and the things that we as a generation get to do every day. So
it's almost like we're a country of dreamers, so it makes sense.
It is.
Dreamers get
it
here.
is. I mean, it's like, and dreamers spawn more dreamers. You know, the more, you know, I have tons of friends, and I'm sure you do too, whose parents were first generation, and then they taught their kids, you can do whatever you want. This is a country where opportunities around every corner, so make the most of it and dream it. And I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. What I would say to someone in South America or different parts of the world that are struggling is that it's not too late and it's never too soon to start changing the paradigm that you are in. And you have an uphill battle. It's much more difficult. It is. But there are still great things happening in many different levels in different parts of the world every day. There are success stories. And, you know, it's kind of a hard thing to answer because it's like a double-edged sword. You know, there are so many incredible things about America, and I love it so much. I would die for it. But I see the challenges that we face as well. And I see where we have made mistakes and wrong turns. And so as I say all this, I don't want to like paint a picture that once you make it to America, then, you know, it's all paved with gold. It's not. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of, you know, you have to work your butt off to make something happen still. Yeah, I don't really have an answer that's like complete as far as like what you tell someone that's, you know, born into poverty in the poorest countries in the world. What are their options? Oftentimes it's not the government, and there's not enough catalysts or movements. There's not enough leaders, you know. Leaders are born from education, from being like educated and being poured into like through teaching. That's where leaders are birthed, and that's, I ultimately think, what changes this society is having leaders. Nelson Mandela is the most well-known and profound leader in any African country that we could point to and say, look at what he did to change the way a country works. But unfortunately, there are a few leaders in Africa that have given back, stepped down from power, and made a huge difference in countries. So.
I got a lot of questions. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that there are, you know, so few leaders that we can quote? Why is Africa, you know, the poorest continent in the world, and, you know, we are the richest nation in the world? How did that come about? What do you think is possibly the main factor for that?
Mm-hmm. It's a big question. There's my answer will not be complete, but I think there's a lot to say about the continent being the most ravaged from resources, not only human resources, but minerals, gold, oil, rubber have been stolen from the continent over many, many centuries. And that alone would ravage or damage any continent or country. So when you look at it in that context, that much of the West was built on the backs of us, stealing and just taking from the continent of Africa. Those ripple effects are being felt today still. Colonization, there are good or interesting, I should just say, colonization brought medicine, it brought education, it brought a greater worldview for a lot of people that were colonized, but it destroyed countries. It destroyed it because you have, for the first time, tribes being pinned up against tribes and being put into one country and being forced to democratize or to work together. And the idea of colonization and the way it was implemented is the cause and the root reason why there are so many wars going on that continent today. You can trace it back and you can say, oh, it was because when the West came in, whether it was France or Italy or Belgium or the UK, when they came in and they took the Ugandan people and they educated them and they gave them the political positions, and then they made the Acholi people in the north, this is all in Uganda, the warriors and the fighters and the farmers. And then when they left and they gave the country back to Uganda, then of course war is going to break out because they didn't set it up to where it was diverse. It wasn't, the people running the country were not diverse. It was favoring one tribe over the other. And so the war in northern Uganda that we're currently trying to end is a direct result of what happened 100 years ago in Uganda when the British came in and said, here's how you do it. So when this war finally ends, it's not just a 22-year war against Joseph Kony and President Yoweri Museveni. It is a war that will put to rest it will put to rest what happened and how we went in and colonized. I say we as in the West went in and colonized. So it's really actually like a greater question when you say, should the West care? Even though it wasn't us physically doing it, it was our ancestors and the people that went before us that did a lot of the damage. And we are feeling the ripple effects, or I should say they are feeling the ripple effects of what our selfish ancestors did. And therefore, on that reason alone, I really do think that we should be involved in healing the continent.
That is, that's like the main reason I want to make this film. Honestly, it's like, because I believe, like, I feel like the history of colonization hadn't been taught about, hadn't been, like, people didn't know it, and they didn't really understand the grasp of it. So all these people talking about Africa this, Africa that, need to help themselves, like, realize how much damage our forefathers did, or Westerners did, the impact they had, and just the ripple effects of that. I see Darfur connected to that, Uganda connected to that, Congo connected to that, all that, and so.
I forget, man. I just was looking up his name again. I should remember it. But I do believe that this quote is true, and it is that the darkest part about the African continent is the West's ignorance towards it. We do not know. We haven't been taught. The history is murky. And so in a way, it's like you can't blame the West because the education system has done a poor job at, like, there's been studies shown that an American high school student who graduates from their senior year of high school gets a paragraph on the continent of Africa out of their entire education. A paragraph.
That's probably what I got.
Yeah. Me too. I'm like, I think I read one book about it, which is more than a paragraph. But that's it. It's very small. So we don't know. Even if you ask a college-educated American citizen, you ask them very basic, simple questions about the continent, they know very little about it. They'll admit it, I don't even know. I have no idea where Sudan is on the map. I have no idea. Just very basic, elementary things. And yet what's interesting to me is that you go to Uganda, these kids who don't have the best education, they know exactly where California is. They know where New York City is. They understand a little bit more about the West and the culture. I would say a lot more than we even do about Africa. Yeah.
Okay, so kind of switching gears a little bit. I almost think this is probably where your expertise comes in. Is that All right, so all this stuff you just told us,
Yeah.
how do we get young people to care? How do we get 15 to 25-year-olds who are watching Jackass, who are busy on YouTube watching goofy videos, that are apathetic, maybe that are even depressed? Just the whole, the whole group of them, Americans, young Americans. How do we get them to do something? How do we get them to care? What really reaches them the best?
Yeah. My answer is stories. I think that's the best way that you can change someone, is that if you tell a story that's riveting, compelling, it connects to the viewer, then they can't forget it. Then you're literally bringing what's going on to the forefront of their minds. And us in the West, we watch media day in and day out. That's all we do, is like constantly take in stories or media or music videos. I think that there is a depletion of content. There is like a lack of good stories being told. So for us, that's what we do. We try to tell stories that will captivate and motivate young people to do something. And I think it's the most powerful thing that we could do. Mm-hmm.
So I just saw, we were talking about The Devil Came on Horseback, right?
Yeah.
And that's a great story, talking about that Marine and his experience and going to Darfur and working there and just like the drama in that. But, I mean, would you agree that that's a good story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very compelling.
But nobody's going to go see that movie with me. Like, how do I...
No one's going to see that movie.
Nobody's going to see that movie because it's a great story, but it's Africa. It's like, what's it about? Devil Came on Horseback. Is it about Africa? It's like, yeah, it's about Africa. Is it going to make me feel bad? Yeah, it's probably going to make you feel something.
Yeah.
And it's like, how do I get those? How do I get those people that, even though I have good stories about this, they still don't want to see it?
Yeah. For us, like our kind of mantra or motto is that we don't want people to act out of guilt, because guilt fades. Guilt lasts for a night or a season, but then it goes away, and it really leaves you feeling pretty lame. But if you motivate people by inspiring them, and you show these devastating stories, but you have hope and resilience built into it, because every story over there that I've ever encountered does have even a sliver of hope. If you point them towards that, and you point them towards the elements that are funny, or that are, what's the word I'm looking for? Surprising, then people will be more attracted to it. I think the West has become more and more jaded to the war, famine, disease, AIDS, starvation. Like, there's just on and on. That's what we constantly think about, and we become tired of hearing that. When you finally break through and you say, the children there are just like your children. They're just like your children. And here's how. And you connect the two worlds, then you have people that are motivated and inspired to do something. And it changes the way they think about the continent.
Once we get them to do something, we get them to care, we reach them where they're at, we tell a good story, include the funny elements, the stuff that like is honest and surprising, like you said.
Yeah.
What can they actually do? I mean, like, they're young kids. Do they have any? Can they really do anything? I mean, they don't have any money, they don't have any jobs. A lot of them are slackers. What are they actually going to do, even if we do get them to care?
To me, it's not so much a question of what can they do. The question is, what can they not do? There's a lot they can do. I mean, there's seriously an endless amount of ideas and an endless amount of resources at their fingertips. This generation is the most powerful generation to have ever walked the planet Earth. There has never been a race or a time period where young people have the world at their fingertips. You have, for the first time in human history, a reversal of education, where the youth are gaining more and more education and resources than their parents. For example, if you have a computer in the home, you have the parent asking the child to fix the computer. You're having the parent ask the child, how do you navigate this website? How do you edit this video? How do you do A, B, C? There's a lot that there's a generation gap that's happened. I've been straddling that gap because I'm almost 30. So I've seen the digital revolution happen in front of my eyes. And there's still sometimes where I'm like, I don't get that, where it comes natural to a 12-year-old. And I'm asking a 12-year-old, you mean this is how you load pictures on Facebook. And they're like, yeah, you just do this and this and this, and then you write this code. You know, you have young kids writing code on a computer. It's unheard of 10 years ago, unheard of, even 5 years ago. So with that resource, with that power comes responsibility. You can do so much good. It's not so much also what it's not for us. It's like not so much what you can do. It is. Let me think of how to phrase this. It's not so much what you can do, because every person is going to do something. It's just how has their mental landscape or their paradigm changed and switched and reprioritized, like the values of what they value. How has that changed? Because once you switch that, once you turn it on its head, then whatever they do after that is going to have a powerful effect. It will have a ripple effect, and it will transcend whatever thing that we can tell them to go do, because they will already be doing it. It'll be in their DNA to do it. So, and it ultimately comes down to them being an authentic person, because when you see someone who is authentic, who's your friend or family member, and they had a life change experience, and the way they live their life is different, you can't help but notice that difference. And in many ways, your life will be different even when you interact with them, because they'll challenge the way you think, and they'll motivate you, not through guilt, but just by living their life. You'll say, wow, that's an inspiring way. It's a different way to be a human being. And we've seen that happen in history when you read the books and you say, you know, the idea of America is different. It's very different from where they came from, you know, Europe. When when the Pilgrims came here, they said, we're going to try something totally different. And, you know, it's going to look different than we've ever had before. We're not going to have a king, you know, and it's going to go like this, like this, like that. And they had to change their paradigm and change the way they thought about living in a society. And I think there's time to do that again. We will constantly be evolving and perfecting this idea of democracy, or this idea of human rights. And so I think this generation has the most ability to do something different. Mm-hmm.
It's a great answer. So I was going to ask you what you think, because you talked about priorities, like switching priorities. Mm-hmm. And I was going to say what do you think their priorities should be, but I guess a better question than that, and I think what speaks to people more, is like asking what are your priorities. Like, so if I asked you what are your priorities, what would you say?
Yeah.
In your life, in your personal life.
Yeah. Well, I think that for me it has to do with, like, I always say people first. That's something that I try to live by. It's a part of like my value system or DNA, is like putting people first. And so when it comes down to living out daily decisions, I constantly think about that. No, put people first before your own priorities. So that's like a huge shift for a lot of people, I think, because we're taught innately to think about ourselves first. Like, well, where's my food or my money or my job or my education? What about me, you know? Instead, you're like, no, put the other person in front of you. I think by doing that, in the long run, you will get more than you ever expected. And I'm not just saying like, you know, not just saying like emotionally filled up or like spiritually satisfied. You will get more financially. You will get more friends. You know, you will get more. If there's like a way to think of human capital, you will get more from it if you put people first. Because when you knock on other people's doors and you say, hey, can I have some help? They're like, yeah, you always put me first. Of course, I'll help you. So that's like my number one kind of agenda, is putting people first. But I think that there's something to be said about like purpose, the idea of purpose, and understanding what your purpose is. A lot of people don't wake up to their purpose till they're like 40 or 50. A lot of people who've like thought money was their purpose or their priority, it shifts because they're like, I got all the money I ever wanted, I have more than I ever need, now I want to like actually do something, you know. And that's when you see a lot of 40 to 50 year olds like change and say, I want to give back, or I want to do more. I think what's exciting is a lot of people are realizing that sooner than like our parents' generation did. So, and then I think that you know, like the planet fits in there, and I think at some level profit does, because if I can't feed my child, if I can't buy him formula or diapers, it's going to be taxing on myself. Like, it's going to be a struggle. So in some way, we have to make a profit. If Invisible Children wants to continue to do what it's doing, and we believe in the work that it's doing, we have to get in money in order to pay the employees and keep the machines and the lights on. So you have to think about profit. You can't just throw it out the window. And but it's okay. There's actually a sign up there somewhere that says, like, don't be scared of money. You know, make money. It's an okay thing. You know, it's a great motivator. You know, when you're like, we have to provide X amount of dollars every single month in order to keep this company alive. It motivates you to be pretty entrepreneurial and pretty inventive and creating something out of nothing. Or when you see like a carrot, you're like, let's use every single piece of it, you know? Let's figure out how to cut it up and make sure that every type of, you know, resource that we can get out of it is used. That's when you become creative and inventive and create something out of nothing.
I got one more question.
Yeah.
You got it, and then we'll be done.
Okay, cool.
Because this is it's like, oh man, it's intense. So my last question is, what motivates you to do all this? I mean, you know, so you went to Africa. I mean, like, what's like the essential motivator? You went to Africa. You guys are leading this organization. I'm sure it's stressful just knowing what it is, trying to put this film together. You know, trying to organize this stuff, help people in Africa, make a difference, and challenge youth, and do an event where 80,000 kids show up. I mean, all that. Like, what motivates you through all of that to continue doing the work you guys do?
Yeah, I have a lot of like people on my list of motivators. You know, there's like Dan Eldon, the journalist who died in Mogadishu, Somalia, and he left all of his journals that were published. He was a huge inspiration and motivator. I always look at the way Oprah and Bono, I look at Steven Spielberg, I look at just a lot of different people that have constantly come into my life, and I've said, wow, like, that's a huge inspiration to me and a motivator to me. Those are very external as far as, like, you know, reading a book or watching them live their life out. It motivates me. But I'd say the biggest internal motivator is that ultimately I believe that we at our core are spiritual beings caught in a physical body. And I think that I know that in Africa, if you have a circle and if you have a dot, in the West, the dot represents religion or our spiritual life, and the circle represents life or ourself, you know. But in Africa, it is the opposite. The dot represents themselves, and the circle represents their spiritual life. So in a sense, every day, 90% of their day is spiritual. If it rains, it's because God has given them the rain. If they pray for their daily bread, they receive their daily bread. When they sing praise and worship, they're literally singing it. They're not just doing it because the congregation's doing it. So a huge motivator, the number one motivator for me, is to see people waking up to their true spiritual self. And it's not by saying, here's a track, or here's like Jesus in a box, or like here's like a 3-step program. It's about witnessing a transformative way of living. And it's very clear, it says in the Bible that the poor in spirit will inherit the kingdom of heaven. And so to me, when I witness that and I see the kingdom happening here on earth, the idea that this is not all there is to this world, there is more. There can't be hunger in your belly and there be no such thing as food. You know, we have hunger and we eat food and it satisfies us. So there's a hunger inside of all of our hearts or souls, whatever you want to call it. There's an emptiness and it's not being fulfilled. But it will eventually, the kingdom will eventually come. And it says the kingdom is here on earth today. It's here. So to me, that's a huge motivator when I see people in public scenarios, in assembly screenings, waking up to their true self, you know, and saying, like, I have identified with the reason I was created, and religion or spirituality is not a dot for me. It's like a daily active choice, and it has to do with justice, and it has to do with equality, and it has to do with connecting with other human beings that are different than me. And so that's probably the biggest motivator, that seeing that life change is extremely addicting, because once you've done that, I can't think of what else I'm going to do, you know, in life. When I think about other jobs or scenarios of which I thought my life was going to play out, they really pale in comparison to seeing life change here amongst my friends and amongst similar people that were raised in the same paradigm and culture that I am, and then like seeing actual life change happening in Uganda. Yeah, it's a great life.
Quick question.
Yeah.
I truly respect religion, you know, it's how it goes for you, but if you could remove all that from there and see it from an atheist viewpoint, how would everything you've done so far with Invisible Children, what would change about that? Or even now, because you talk so much about spirituality, I don't have that luxury of having that and feeling motivated by that whatsoever, so I have to go purely on my concern for other people and just the desire to want to do good, rather than the desire for God pushing me to do good, if that makes any sense. So
yeah, it's like it's the way I see a lot of movies, whether it's like Juno or The Dark Knight or you name it. You know, you name any movie, and I believe in some way that God finds his way into the story, and people don't know it. It's not like blatant. You don't necessarily like watch it and you're like, oh, there's like the God message. No, but he does find his way into that story that's being told, and that is what's connecting to an audience. So even though that's not a motivation for you, like the spiritual God element at all, I think that you can't help but when you give to someone else and you do something for someone else, there's a sliver, or there's something happening within you. You might call it just like, you know, a physical perk, or like maybe it's like an adrenaline rush, or your heart beats a little bit faster or something, but there is something happening within you when you give back, or when you put someone else before you, or when you befriend someone who wasn't your friend before. There's something unique happening. You could call it magic, you could call it a lot of people do call it spiritual, but I think that even that motivator, because I think a lot of people that do follow Invisible Children's story, we don't have any spiritual elements, you know, on our website, in our material, in our DVD. I'm just speaking for myself, you know. That's like why I do what I do. I don't want you to come and like, okay, like follow the God I serve because it's the right way. I believe that God in his way will connect with you, and the story that you're living out will in whatever way collide. If you're gonna give back, if you're gonna do something, there has to be, in my opinion, there is an otherworldly motivation. Because I honestly don't know why, or if you should or could do it, you know? I don't know. It's a great question. Yeah. It's a great question.
I appreciate the answer. Thank you.
Yeah.